Nick Woolsey's name is absolutely legendary in the poi world. He's responsible for teaching thousands of poi spinners how to use the prop. But more than that, he's a man who completely changed the way that we spin, perform, and navigate the poi world. So I thought I would take an opportunity to drill down why Nick is so important and all the things that we have to thank him for. Drex here from DrexFactor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And in this video, I want to tell you a whole lot about the guy who inspired me to start this channel and why I think we're all still living in his shadow. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these awesome companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. And special thanks to the non-business friend of the channel, Pekka Pekkonen. Thank you so very much for supporting my channel, my work, and my mission. So first up, we definitely have to catch up anybody who doesn't already know. Who exactly is Nick Woolsey? Nick Woolsey is a Canadian poi spinner, fire dancer, flow artist, and online educator who is famous for his online tutorials, flow retreats, and a poi video that radically changed the landscape of the flow world back in the 2000s. That video, Dervishly Yours, was perhaps the first viral poi video in an era before YouTube even existed, and it catapulted Nick into worldwide fame in the very young world of the flow arts. After its success, Nick explored a variety of different means for teaching his techniques for spinning poi, from owning a dance studio in Vancouver to shooting one of the first instructional DVDs for poi, and oh yeah, he started a YouTube channel called Play Poi too. With more than 18 million views as of the recording of this video, the Play Poi channel was the most popular destination for people looking to spin poi online for nearly a decade and a half, and Nick's name became nearly synonymous with learning poi through online tutorials. Nick retired just a few years ago due both to injury as well as wanting to move on and do other things with his life, but he definitely lives on as one of the giants in poi history and education. And this is just scratching the surface of Nick Woolsey's story. I had the privilege of interviewing him several years ago for my Profiles in Poi series, so if you'd like to learn more about Nick's life and career, I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description as well as up in the cards if you're watching on YouTube. If you're familiar with his work, it's certain you already like and respect him, but I think we sometimes forget that his impact goes far beyond his tutorials. In fact, I'd argue that Nick radically changed what modern poi spinning looks like, and that we are all still working from the example that he set nearly 2 decades ago. More than that, he created a template for flow arts-based content creators like myself to find careers and have an impact on the world. So in this video, I want to take you through some of the many ways that I think Nick's influence continues to reverberate through the poi world and indeed the wider world to this day, starting with Nick's style of spinning poi. For people who came into the poi world after the tech poi revolution of the late 2000s and early 2010s, it may come as something of a shock to take a look at what poi spinning actually looked like before that. Poi was spun in a fashion that was typically agnostic of the perspective of the crowd. Looking at old footage of people spinning in this era, they were as likely to use wheel plane as they were wall plane, and frequently planar orientations that were everywhere in between. To say nothing of the fact that everything was weaves, butterflies, or other tricks that involved tucking the hands closely to the body in a nearly immobile fashion. So it's not hard to see Dervishly Yours as being the first modern poi spinning video in a lot of different regards. First up, this was one of the first uses of the now common convention of treating all poi tricks as though they were in wall plane, displaying as large a volume of the poi's movement to the audience as possible. Second, Nick made extensive use of poi flowers in his performance. It was as though he'd thrown out the classical canon of poi tricks and started over from scratch. Nick spent years, and I do mean years, trying to spread the gospel of poi flowers as a means of gaining complete freedom of movement with the prop. of learning to hold the arms open rather than crossed whenever possible, and of flattening the poi relative to the audience to give them the best possible picture. In some ways, Nick was kind of the right person at the right time in this regard. As sharing online video became one of, if not the most common form of popular media, amateur video favors a two-dimensional style of spinning that essentially flattens the movement of the poi relative to the audience. Nick happened to work on popularizing this style right at a time when it was perfectly suited to an emerging format for content. Nowadays, we take all these conventions for granted. They're not unique to a specific style of poi, they're just how poi is spun in a modern context. And it does need to be said that Nick was far from the only poi spinner that was approaching the prop this way. But he is definitely the person who did the most to integrate this approach into educating people on how to spin the prop and normalizing these conventions. Whether or not you learn poi from Nick's videos, you almost certainly learn poi from somebody who themselves learned from Nick's videos. And I can just about guarantee that because of that, you spin a lot like him, as do thousands of other poi spinners all across the world. But that's not the only way in which Nick had a major impact on the world of poi spinning, nor on me as a flow artist. In fact, I'd argue that another one of his major innovations is so widespread that we completely forget the role that he had in establishing it. So let's talk about how Nick built his online business. I recently had a chat with some folks in the gloving world, and it was really eye-opening to realize just how much media around gloving has been filtered through just one company. They launched a wide variety of different personalities, technologies, fashion, and more. How, my gloving friends asked, would their art continue on without this company in the mix? And I honestly found that question to be kind of odd, because for all the time I've been in the poi world, we've worked in such a way that individual artists create their own unique channels and brands to have a direct line of communication with their audience and fans. And I cannot think of many poi spinners who did more to establish this model than Nick Woolsey. Think about it. How many of us became established in the flow arts, and more specifically poi spinning, by creating channels where we share flow videos, tutorials, reviews, etc. We introduce the world to our personality on camera and create a relationship with our viewers where they feel like they're hanging out with a friend. For viewers that want to support us, we offer affiliate codes with popular prop-making manufacturers, online courses where people can learn from lessons we've spent years refining, or attend live events and learn from us directly. And if you're listening to all that and saying to yourself, "But Drex, that sounds more like what you do," then guess what? You're not wrong. But where do you think I got that idea from in the first place? Who do you think I was cribbing notes from, and whose career do you think I modeled my own on? This has been really powerful for our community, too. It means that there's no single company or entity that has a stranglehold on access to the poi world. There's nobody we all have to go to in order to pay homage or earn the goodwill of in order to build an audience or start a career. It means that the poi world is personality-driven rather than company-driven. We connect to people instead of companies, and don't get me wrong, there are both positives and negatives to that approach. But I definitely owe my own career to the breakthroughs Nick achieved as an independent artist and, well, influencer. Nick was one of those a decade before we even had a word for that idea. And I really can't get over the fact that this happened by accident. Nick was working on another instructional DVD and running into a lot of technical and storytelling hurdles, so to fill in the time, he began taking requests for tutorials and posting them on his YouTube channel. Those tutorials built his presence and career and showed countless other poi spinners on their way up, myself included, how exactly to build a presence online. It also has to be said that the core products that Nick offered all centered around one specific facet of the poi world that he's also had an incalculable impact in: learning and education. Before the start of YouTube, there were only two ways to learn poi spinning. You could learn in person from somebody who knew the basics, or you could buy an instructional DVD and work your way through the lessons contained on it. To us nowadays, that probably sounds ludicrous. How did this art ever grow if access to learning was this hard to come by? Well, the answer is very, very slowly. But all that changed. For those of us coming up in the Poi world now, there is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to educational resources online. Not only are there tutorials for nearly everything under the sun, but you have access to multiple approaches to teaching the same trick from a multitude of different voices and perspectives. And that all started with Nick. He is the reason so many of us have gotten the chance to learn Poi online, and that is way more powerful than you might think. I can't count the number of comments I've gotten from people learning Poi from my videos who live in what are referred to as flow deserts, places where there are no other Poi spinners or other flow artists for hundreds of miles around. And yet, thanks to access to online video, they're still able to learn how to spin. This is an incredibly powerful tool to have when it comes to growing a community. It means an art can reach places that people who practice it might otherwise never set foot in. It means people can learn the art regardless of their access to people or even finances. It means that growth in the art can become exponential and there's no limit to it. And that has had both good and bad impacts on the flow community. The level of access and the focus on creating educational resources has meant that we grew rapidly for more than a decade and brought a whole lot of new people into this world. On the other hand, it also means that learning now is frequently self-directed and people might learn similar concepts years apart simply because they interact with the information at different points in their journey. In addition, many have pointed out that it's led to a homogenization of Poi as a style. While there are some regionally specific styles of Poi out there, by and large, there is a consistency of stylistic conventions across not only language and culture, but also continents as well. We kind of take this for granted now, but it took having a popular figure in the Poi world centering their online presence around creating tutorials to make this a reality. In short, it took Nick Woolsey carving out that aspect of flow culture as a recipe for growing an online presence for any of the rest of us to get there. And it also has to be said that Nick influenced not just where we go to learn Poi, but also how we learn Poi. I'm one of many people that learned watching Nick's tutorials that it was helpful to not just demonstrate a trick, but to give people detailed walkthroughs on how to perform them. Sometimes this involved coming up with other familiar movements to compare the Poi tricks to. Sometimes it involved coming up with clever metaphors. One of Nick's great skills as a teacher was to approach learning Poi from the perspective of a complete novice and finding great ways to break through whatever blocks they may have to learning, whether they be physical or mental. He offered up detailed lesson plans that took students through multiple stages of accomplishment, getting down one skill that would inform another skill, each one eventually leading to the goal that they had in mind at the start. He didn't invent this method for teaching, but he made it the default way that Poi educators like myself have approached teaching the prop ever since. If you've ever learned Poi by building from basic skills to tricks and then more complex skills, you're working in the mold that Nick pioneered in our world. So, to summarize, even though he's no longer active in the Poi world, Nick Woolsey has had a deep and long-term influence on the artistic conventions, business conventions, and educational conventions of the Poi world. We owe a lot to him, and not just for creating videos that were fun and informative. He also helped influence the character and direction of Poi spinning and the flow arts. It says a lot that despite being banned from traveling to the United States fairly early on in his career, Nick was still able to amass a massive fan base here nonetheless. And in so doing, he revolutionized how we all spin and how those of us who do it for a living can go about doing so. So, thank you, Nick, for all the gifts you've given us. They are perhaps more wide-ranging and comprehensive than even you know. Just FYI, there is an extended version of this video available now to my subscribers over on Patreon that has an additional section on how Nick influenced the theory of spinning for other props besides Poi. You can go check that out over at patreon.com/DrexFactor Poi. What's your favorite Nick Woolsey video, and are there ways that he influenced the Poi world that I forgot to touch on? Leave me a comment and let me know. If you got anything out of this video, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to help other people find it and to help my channel grow. This video would not be possible without the kind support of all of these wonderful people right here. These are my Flow patrons over on Patreon. They and the people listed down in the description help to make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. Thank you one and all for your very, very generous support. And if you out there watching are not currently a supporter, but you'd like to become one, you can do that by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There, you'll get access to a whole host of awesome rewards, but even better than that, you'll be helping me out in my mission to bring poi spinning and flow arts to the whole wide world. Do check that out, please and thank you. If you'd like to see some interviews I've conducted with a variety of figures in the poi world, Nick included, I'll include a link to a playlist of my profiles and poi videos down in the description or up on screen if you're watching on YouTube. Also, the YouTube algorithm thinks that you might like this top video here, so maybe give that a look as well. Would you like to see me do another video like this for another personality in the poi world? Leave me a comment and let me know who. For now, make sure to get out and flow, and I'll see you with a new video real soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.